Good morning, everyone. It is so great to have everyone here this morning to talk fierce females. I might just do this like once a month, choosing a fierce female to join me. And I'm definitely joined today by one. Allison Bittel, she is an executive at Colliers, but more importantly, she has created an incredible organization called the Women's Collective that I am proud to be a part of. And I asked her if she would come on and talk a little bit about. And Allison, I see you. I am just, see here. I had this problem last week that it wouldn't let me. Hold on. Try requesting again. Let's see. I had the same problem last week where I see her and it's not letting me. There we go. There.
Created this amazing organization, the Women's Collective, that joins amazing women that can support one another in all of these challenging times that we face. Good morning to you, Allison. It's so good to see you.
Good morning. How are you?
Hi, I'm great. I'm so happy to have you here in what I called might be a monthly thing where I choose a fierce female to come on and talk about ways that we can lift each other up, empower each other, and really make great things happen with each other's help. I'm a big supporter of that type of movement, which is why I love being a part of your organization. First, before we get started, can you just tell people a little bit about what the Women's Collective is? This is sort of your baby that you birthed, and you've done great things with it.
Sure. Yeah. So the Women's Collective was started earlier this year, right before the pandemic hit. And really my intent with the Women's Collective was to bring together C-suite and senior level women to give them a forum to educate and help advance women in the workplace. I think so much of it starts at the top, and there's so few women leaders at the top. So this is a chance for us to come together as women and be able to figure out ways that we can influence change in our workplaces.
It's even having some of the tough conversations that some of us have to have at work because, for example, and I know you did this when your children were young, it's how do you have a conversation with your boss that you need to go part-time and that you still can be productive and you still can give so much value and be successful in your career. I mean, let's talk about that importantly because,
Sure.
You know, a lot of people are going to have to be making that decision if they end up going back to work, but they want to stay home a few days. I mean, how did you navigate that?
Gosh, I feel like it was a day by day. When my kids were little, my husband was traveling. He was gone 4 or 5 days a week, and I had little ones, and I had a great daycare. I had a great support in my friends and my family nearby to help me. But I think, you know, you really almost can't see the forest for the trees sometimes, and you just have to sort of put one foot in front of the other and push your way through. And it's definitely, I think with COVID, the McKinsey study recently came out, the 2020 women in the workplace. And it's something that we as women measure every year. We're excited for it to come out in September so we can see where are our numbers this year. And it's talking a lot about the risk that we have of losing about 25% of women in the workplace. Staggeringly.
I mean, that's something that all of us have talked about. Like, this is just too challenging, right? Distance learning and working from home and all of that. But the real headline from this study that you're talking about is that we risk losing all the progress that we've made. I mean, we've made so much progress over the last few decades. And you've really dug through it. And what is it showing you?
What it's showing me is that women they're working double duty. There's no separation between work and home life right now. You're always on. You're on 24 hours a day. And it talks about the fact that, you know, mothers are 3 times more likely to take on the household duties than a father or a partner. And women feel like they're not performing. They feel like they can't perform at home. They can't be the mom or the wife they need to be and also show up for work. I think working from your house in some cases is really hard. It's hard to, you know, and traditionally you drop your kids at daycare or at school and you go to work and you're 100% at work for the hours that you're at work. And then you come home and you're home again. And we don't have that separation right now. And I think that is a huge problem for women, having to try to balance all that.
What advice do you have? And I encourage any of our viewers to ask questions because, I mean, you've been successful at doing this. You've juggled it. You've been through it in the early years. You've been incredibly successful in your career. What advice do you have for those women that feel kind of like they're drowning? They're trying to keep their head above water.
Sure. Well, just know I'm feeling that way too. Even after all these years, you know, I think it's little things, Lynn. Something I recently discovered, it sounds very simple, Instacart. I have started ordering my groceries. I don't have them delivered by Instacart, but I order them and I swing through Publix or Kroger and pick them up. And that saves me 45 minutes on a weekend, right? It's little things like that that you can do to take some things off your plate. I think we feel like we're carrying this backpack that's so full, right? What are things in our backpack that we can take out? Can you ask your spouse or your partner to maybe take a couple of the things on that you're handling? I think we have to be willing to not have to be perfect at everything too. I've had to learn that, maybe the towels aren't going to get folded exactly the way I want them, or and if you have kids, I'm a big proponent of bringing the kids into the mix. My kids are older now, but even when they were little, give them a couple of things that they can do to help around the house. And maybe you pay them an allowance every week. And again, it's about sort of giving yourself the flexibility to do more for you. And you don't get that time when you're constantly on and you're constantly working. So I would say Instacart has been awesome. If you don't use Instacart, sit down with your spouse and try to figure out how to, more equally distribute some of the household chores right now, just in this time. And get your kids involved. It's a family. We live in a house and everybody can help out.
You and I had a conversation the other week, and you told me that you started when your son was 4.5 years old. I have a 4.5-year-old, literally, and I'm not joking, Allison, the day after you told me that, he started unloading the dishwasher, just the utensils. Yeah. And it worked. I was like, I thought he was too young. Thank you for that. I will continue to do it.
Yeah. Try the waste baskets next. You can teach him how to empty the waste baskets. That was the other thing.
I'm doing waste baskets. He's taking out the trash. We're doing vacuuming. I've just got a whole system down now.
Yeah.
You have been very, very fortunate to work for a company that supports women in great ways. And that's how you even created the Women's Collective. They encouraged you. They support you in it. What do you say to women that don't have that same kind of manager that you have, that isn't understanding, may not have kids, maybe a man, and feels like that's a disadvantage as you, an employee, having children?
I think encourage them to read this Women in the Workplace study, because I think that what they'll find, women traditionally, if companies are measured by performance, companies that have women in senior leadership typically outperform their peer companies that don't have women at senior levels. So companies themselves are at a huge risk if these senior women leave their companies. So I would start with encouraging them to read this and try to understand. And if you're in an organization that doesn't support or doesn't have the willingness, then maybe you're in the wrong organization. Because I do think now, and the study talks a lot about, this is the time for companies, and it even delves into, it's not that companies aren't doing anything, because they are. There are companies that are extending paid time off for employees that need extra time. They're providing mental health resources and those sorts of things. But how many organizations are looking at, what are the performance metrics, right? Like pre-COVID, your performance metrics were probably very different than what performance looks like during COVID. And so how many companies have really sat down with their women employees or all of their employees and looked at what are the performance metrics now, and maybe adjusting? There's so much pressure, especially for women. And there's a lot of discussion in the study about women at the top and how they're considered the onlys, right? Because they're usually one of the onlys out there. I know we've talked about your sister being a senior level leader as well. And, women, when you're an only, to your point, how do you approach your male counterparts? It just starts with having the conversation and getting it out in the open, because I do think we're going to lose a ton of progress if we don't do something.
A lot of people also don't have the luxury of things like childcare to be able to do that. But you and I have talked about how important the village is, and how important it is to ask for help and be that support for other women.
Absolutely. And any of my friends that are listening, they're my village, right? Like I have a mom village. I have neighbors that are my village. I mean, my village is big, and at any time I need something, there's someone I can call to help. And I do think we have to lean on each other. I have two good friends, and they actually swapped off weekends. They needed to they needed a break. So one weekend, one family took both sets of kids, and one couple went and just had quiet time, and then they alternated, right? Like it was something simple, like I'll take your kids for the weekend, you take my kids, and just give yourselves a chance, because Families are under immense pressure. You've got, in some cases, two spouses working from home. If your kids are homeschooling, you're home round the clock. You don't have any change of scenery or any change of pace.
Yeah. Can I be friends with those people that will
Sure.
take my kids to the weekend?
Well, you could even get if you live in a neighborhood and you've got, teenage babysitters.
Yeah.
Pay a teenage babysitter to come a few hours a week and just give yourself a break. I think we try. I'm guilty of it. My husband will get on me about, well, why are you trying to do everything yourself? Well, it's just how we're built, right? We're like, oh, they're not going to fold the towels right. I just better to do it myself. Like we've talked about that. And so it's letting go and asking for help. And I think that's a big part of what we've got to learn to do.
We have a question in here talking about what you're doing is timely and noble. And it's wonderful. And it's something I've asked you before when it comes to Women's Collective being on a national level. But this is, with digital being our new normal, any plans to take this global, reaching out to women from other countries? I think it's the same question of how you make something like this more accessible everywhere, because this kind of support system I know has been invaluable for me and for all types of women that are lucky enough to have this in their hometown.
No, it's a great question. And I've had friends from other cities ask me about it. And I absolutely want to grow this. I think this being our first year, we want to get it right. We want to figure out how can we best execute to support women, because there's so much talk that goes on. And so we're really about action. And so we're actually working. We have our board meeting on Friday to go over our strategic plan for next year. And so I think as we sort of build our action plan, I do think we'll be able to take this to a national and maybe even an international level at some point. Because again, the senior level people are where we need to start. And again, if we don't have senior level women at the top to ask these questions, things won't change.
Such a good point. B. Darity 80, you make a good point as well. He says there are pressures for dads working at home with kids remote learning, something to keep in mind. I completely agree. I live that in my household. My husband, very busy full-time job, me, very busy full-time job. And both of us are dealing with, gosh, you have to keep the kids quiet. I have a conference call. And, it's so challenging for everyone in a home. And I know for me, the way that we've handled this situation is we've just given each other grace, and we've given each other as much understanding and patience that we have, because sometimes I can't keep the kids quiet on his conference call, and he's in the closet in our bedroom, making a big deal. I mean, it's really, really challenging. How do you and your husband do it? Because you both work full time.
Well, like I said, any of my friends listening will laugh, because when we bought our house, I've always worked from home one day a week. So I have a home office, and my husband's invaded it, and we joke about it. Like we're sharing a home office right now. I'm in my guest room today because he's in the office on a conference call. So you're right. The dads are absolutely feeling it too. And, I'm very fortunate to have a spouse that we've been married almost 20 years, and he's a helper. I mean, he helps with laundry. He'll go pick up the kids from school. I mean, he truly dives in and helps. And you do have to give grace. And we literally in the morning, we look at each other at the breakfast table and say, okay, what calls do you have today? Okay, I have these calls. Who's going to pick up the kids? I mean, it really is a day by day. You just have to sort of put one foot in front of the other. And I think you definitely kudos to the dads out there that are helping, because there's, that means a lot to us wives and moms to have a spouse or a partner that really picks up and helps with the household stuff and the kids. And it's a lot.
I think that's the only way you can make it work, is having a spouse that supports you in that way and looks at it as, okay, let's just keep going. That's all we can do. Just keep going every single day. How can we make this work? Because it's different every day. Lala Mama 74 is saying the village is challenged too by COVID. And you're absolutely right. But I think that that point makes the village more important than ever, because your village needs you as much as you need them. And it's reaching out to the friend who, you could possibly be help to them. I mean, and that's something I'm always thinking about, of like, which friend do I need to check in on? And I get the same back.
Sure. Yeah. And you're right. That's so true. COVID has definitely impacted our ability to be together. Maybe it's a a morning 30-minute call while you're having your cup of coffee, or maybe you get 3 or 4 of your girlfriends out in your driveway and you sit in a chair and you have a glass of wine, and you just, what you realize with your village is that everybody's going through this, and maybe somebody has a suggestion of something they're doing and you say, oh wow, that's a great idea, maybe I should try that. And so it's just about leaning on each other. You're not alone. I think sometimes we're in the 4 walls of our houses with our kids, and I mean, I have 2 dogs, and I mean, it's chaos, and it's wonderful. It's wonderful to have a family, and we're blessed, but there are days where you just think like, I'm the only one going through this, and you're not. There's so many others that you should reach out to, and maybe laugh a little bit about things that are going on. Maybe something happened. My son, one of my kids, fell and broke his wrist 2 weeks ago, and he made it 16 years with. I'm like, of course he broke his wrist. It's 2020.
That's right. I mean, I'm
so
surprised that all of us haven't broken a leg or in a cast. It feels like we're in a cast with what we're going through. Allison, I am just so grateful to have you on to talk about just the importance of supporting women, but also the importance of just relying on each other and relying on your village, and the great work that you're doing. I'm proud to be a part of as well.
We're glad to have you, and thank you for having me on, and let's just all stick together. Everybody work together. We will get through this. We will get through this. I'm convinced 2021 is going to be a better year.
Well said from your mouth to God's ears. Take care, Allison.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Lynn. Bye-bye.